Hey everyone, welcome to my channel, My Road to Damascus. I am Ashley, but I go by Boots, and this is the start of a new beginning that has been long overdue. I'm truly excited. It's been on my heart for the last year or so to get back to YouTubing. I've been so inspired by a lot of other YouTube channels that surrounds the topic of Christ and a lot of different things. As it relates to God, and I definitely know that this is something that definitely God wants. I think that, well, I know for a fact that I have been disobedient when it comes to starting, so here I am. All right, guys, so by the title, I am going to be discussing my celibacy along with my Christian walk over the last almost 5.5 years. So some of you guys may be wondering why I decided to wait to have sex, and a lot of that had to do with a lot of the guilt that I felt while I was participating in sex with my ex-boyfriend. During those times when he and I would fornicate, I would feel very, very guilty. I would feel convicted because I knew what we were doing was wrong. It was almost as if I was living a very much so double life. I was very much so a lukewarm Christian. You would see me participating in all of the church events. You would see me participating and volunteering in the community, serving in the capacities that God has led me in. However, I was doing and committing this one sin, and God weighed heavy in on me during those times. I can remember several nights when my ex and I would be asleep after committing that sin, and God will wake me up from having a bad dream. And every single time, I kid you not, the bad dream will be in relation to my ex at the time. God revealing to me that he is not somebody that he has for me to marry, that he is not somebody that he approves of in general for me to even be in a relationship such as that, is fornicating, that he and I were participating in. And so I remember sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and I would wake my ex up and I would tell him about these dreams that I had. And crazy enough, I would sometimes ask him to pray with me before we go to sleep and ask God to forgive us of our sins. That's how bad I knew what we were doing was wrong. Fast forward to December of 2012. I just got so to the point where the guy was pretty much going back and forth between myself and the mother of his child. I knew in his heart that he wanted to be with the mother of his child because he always had the picture and the ideal to be with whoever he had a child with, because he always wanted a family for himself. And so a lot of that last year of he and I, we spent him going back and forth between wanting to be with me, then wanting to go be with the mother of his child. They had a lot of issues that became very much so toxic for not only him, but for also my life as well. And then I made the decision when I found out he went back to his child's mother to be with them, and he even gave her a ring. It wasn't necessarily an engagement ring, but he gave her a ring for Christmas. Right after he and I had fornicated that same week. And so I prayed and I told God, okay, God, this is definitely not what I want. I see now what different warnings and things you've given me. Let this be a part of my past. And God gave me the strength. For some reason, when I did decide to end things with him, it was unfortunately on the day his father had passed. It was not a conscious decision to do that. Pretty much what I did was I sent him a text prior to me even knowing about his father passing. I sent him a text message and I said, hey, I'm pretty much tired of this. This is what, sorry, that's my dog. This is pretty much what I am tired of. I'm ready to move on with my life. You're not someone that God has for me to marry, and then vice versa. And this will be the last time I will ever speak to you again. And I remember he ended up sending back to me that his father had passed away. And I did empathize with him, and I did tell him that I would be praying for he and his family during that hard time, because I can't imagine losing a father or losing a parent in general, when you're dealing with, when you're that young, when you're only 22, 21, dealing with that. and in the manner in which his father had passed away. And literally that was the last time that I had ever spoken a word to him. I ended up blocking his number. I ended up changing my number. I ended up making sure that I had no form of means to communicate with him. I deleted my Facebook. I deactivated my Instagram and social media, just because I really needed time to get away and focus on God, because I did not want to be tempted again to be wheeled back into another situation with him, for me to slip up and commit another sin. You know, you're not only committing sin against God, you're committing a sin against whoever your future spouse is as well. You are committing adultery by pretty much giving yourself to someone other than who God has ordained to be your husband. And that is what I chose to do. And of course, now today it's been 5.5 years, or not today. And now it has been 5.5 years that I have remained celibacy. I have dated a guy that I did get in a relationship with 2.5 years ago. Those were one of the things that he and I definitely had to discuss, because I did not know where he was at in his walk with Christ when it came to having sex, and he did not know where I was at in my walk with having refraining from participating in any sexual activities. And so when he and I discussed, you know, that we would remain abstinent, that we would not put each other in a situation that would tempt us, we both were in agreement very strongly about remaining focused on God, and also the plans that God had for us, in trying to see if the pursuit of marriage was even, you know, on the top of the head for, you know, our relationship, and if that was God, if that was something that God had in his plans. So during that time when he and I decision that we would remain abstinent and we would keep our relationship as pure as possible to remain focused on God. At that time I was 3 years abstinent, and at that time I believe he was 1.5 years to 2 years abstinent himself. Which it was a beautiful, beautiful thing for us, because he and I had not ever put each other in a situation to want to fornicate, to be naked or anything like that. Of course, we had our moments where we were in the flesh, where, you know, we wanted to do different things, but we made sure that we did not let it get anywhere near to doing any kind of fornicating during that time, which I think was a huge, huge blessing for both he and I, to be able to be responsible adults to make that decision. I actually think that that was one of the many things that attracted him to me whenever we met, because, you know, I had been abstinent for so long, and I hadn't been with multiple men, which, you know, a lot of times where, you know, young women have an absent father, you know, they tend to try to find love in a lot of different men. However, that was not a part of my story. I was more so afraid of being with anybody else, because I thought that, you know, maybe they would just leave me, take a part of me, and then leave me. And just in general, I was never super huge into dating. And so I think that that was another benefit in between my ex, who I gave my virginity to, and my ex of 2.5 years ago. Between that 3-year time span of me meeting my ex-boyfriend in the 3 years that I had been celibate. You know, the Bible definitely talks about how God created us. And I apologize, I'm looking down to my Bible for reference. How God created us, male and female, and how God blessed us, and how he told us to be fruitful in Genesis 1:27 and 28. You know, God definitely does not hate sex. He definitely does not want us to engage in sexual activities, but he wants us to engage in those activities with the person we become in union with the person that he ordains to be our wife or our husband, with that person that we make a vow before God with. That is how important it is. God actually loves us to enjoy having sex, because he designed us to be creatures with hormones that has a desire in our bodies for that. But he only blesses those type of situations for sex when it's with the person he ordains us to be with, or the person that, you know, we make a vow before God to be with, and he puts his blessing and a bow on it. God also talks about his bone being our bone and his flesh being our flesh. He talks about that in Genesis 2:23 and 24. That, you know, we have to remember that when we give ourselves away sexually to anyone, we're giving away a piece of God, what God designed us to. And, you know, sometimes I do think about, now that I am 29, what would it be like if I were still to be a virgin till this day? I would be so amazed at myself, so overjoyed with myself had I decided to still be a virgin till this day, because you do not hear too many women or too many men just in general in our day and age that are almost 30 and still a virgin. I do celebrate my celibacy because I did only have one sexual partner in my entire life since I lost my virginity, which was 9 years ago. And so that is one of the things that I am definitely most proud of, even though the situation was ugly, and how I went about giving something so precious to God away to somebody that was only a seasonal person. And sometimes I think that we do forget that not everybody that comes in your life and they cross your path, whether that is a boyfriend, whether that is a girlfriend, whether that is a friend, whether that is somebody that you meet through another friend. Not everybody that comes across in your life is meant to be a lifer or a permanent person that God has for you. Some people truly are just seasonal people, and unfortunately that guy that I was with, that's the reason why you call guys and girls who you're no longer in a relationship with an ex, because they made an exit out of your life. And so for me, and you know, a lot of people that do remain celibate, or that try to attempt to become celibate, you know, I hear them say after a month in of being celibate that they have that itch, or they're tempted, or, you know, they're struggling in that area. And a lot of times you have to surround yourself with people that are just as driven as you are, that is truly going to push and support you to go ahead and pursue Christ wholeheartedly. One of the things that kept me away from the distractions, not because of the conviction I felt when I was fornicating with my ex, was because I truly did have the desire in my heart to please God. And I was surrounded by people that truly were focused and encouraging me to do the same as well. Not necessarily saying that everybody that I had as a support system during that season in my life knew that I was celibate or knew what I was dealing with internally when it came to me losing my virginity, but they were supporting me in ways to pursue God more. They were also supporting me in ways to expand, you know, my calling in the ministry of teens, and in the ministry of giving back, and a lot of the different things that I had in my heart that I wanted to do. But for me, it hasn't necessarily been easy. Every now and then I do think about sex, and I do have to repent when I do have those thoughts, because it does not glorify God when I do think about those things. And the Bible does talk about that, trying to keep our minds pure and keeping our sights and our focus set on Him. Also, when you're in a relationship with someone, you have to make sure that discussion happens at the beginning, even before you guys begin courting, when you guys are just getting to know each other, before you guys make it official. That is something that is a conversation that a lot of people don't want to have. And I know that conversation can be hard, because people that I have, or men that I have come across that does get my number, or we conversate one time, and they ask or they discuss those questions, you know, if you have kids, you know, what are your thoughts on this? And my rebuttal is, you know, well, I am waiting until I get married. And if that is a problem for them, then, you know, hey, you know, the leaves may fall wherever they land, but this is what my focus is. And so that's one of the things that I was truly thankful for when I did meet my ex that I started dating 2.5 years ago, because he and I both were driven and focused in keeping our bodies pure. And I think that was one of the things that definitely attracted me to him, because he was somebody I had met at church through teen ministry. He was already involved in teen ministry, and then I came along as an ambassador to volunteer in the ministry, and he and I met. And I think when he and I had that conversation, he was definitely impressed because he hadn't met a lot of women that had been celibate. At that time, I was 3 years celibate, and he hadn't met a woman that had been celibate that long. And you know, he had his own struggles in the past with different women, and fornicating and things like that. And I definitely made it clear to him that I did not want to be in a situation where I tempted him, or that I would have him fall short of what we were trying to do as a couple. And that is something that definitely worked out between he and I. And you know, one of the things that I also had to remember in the back of my mind throughout a lot of these years was that sex is not just physical. Sex is most definitely spiritual too. You don't just give away a piece of your physical self. You give a piece of your spiritual self away. And when you do that, you feel empty. And that's a void that is very hard to fill. And a lot of times people turn to alcohol, or they turn to a lot of the things of the world because they have a void that cannot be met. And a lot of times they forget that only God can fill that void. And so that is why it's just so important for us to be able to remain focused and chase Christ for who he is. You know, I remember I heard Lecrae make an analogy. You know, if we're focused and we're running towards Christ, God will eventually allow that spouse, whoever he has to marry us, to be running in the same direction. And then when we look to our left, or when we look to our right, we have whoever God has for us, and they're pursuing the same thing. And we don't stop, we keep going, and we build upon whatever we're doing, and we feed each other that endurance spiritually to be able to keep going, to finish the race that God has called us to go ahead and finish. And so I have to always remember, whenever I'm committing my prayers to God about my husband and my future spouse, that, you know, he and I are both in alignment when it comes to sex. He and I both are in alignment when it comes to our walk with Christ. He and I both are in alignment when it comes to how many children we want to have, how we want to run our households, and things like that, because those are the fundamentals of any relationship. And if you do not work out your stance on sex, then you're not going to be able to work out a lot of different things that come up in a relationship, because that is such a sensitive subject. And a lot of people, even being 30, they don't want to discuss that because of the scars of their past that haven't fully healed. And a lot of the other things that kept me driven to remain celibate in my walk with Christ on the physical side is I did not want to become pregnant. I did not want to have an STD or something as severe as HIV, although there are a lot of different methods now in this day and age to keep those things in alignment and keep those things at bay, and to keep those different things in order as far as management. I did not want to put myself in a situation to have something else that could cause me more stress in my life, because I knew that that was also a possibility that I would gamble with had I made any decisions to want to have sex or to commit the sin of having sex. I know a lot of people in our time do not think that having sex is a big deal, but ultimately it is, because once you get down, you say, this person is done and over with. I gave my body to them. You go on to the next person and you're dating them for a little bit, and they're showing you signs that, hey, they're a great person. And then things go bad after you've given them, you know, your body and a piece of you. And then next thing you know, you're on 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and 8, sometimes higher than that, different individuals that you've slept with, because they haven't been able to fill a void, or they haven't been the person that God has ordained for them to be, your husband or your wife. And so that's why it's so important. And it also, we would not be able to work through a lot of the different things that you typically don't see whenever you are fornicating, because you let a lot of things pass, or you let a lot of things go because you feel that you love this person, or they're satisfying your fleshly side, and that becomes the smoke that is blown on the mirrors. And so that's one of the things that I'm definitely thankful for, because you definitely see the true person for who they are, what baggage they're carrying when you're going into that relationship. And that is one of the things why God definitely talks about our body being our temple and cherishing that. And so if you guys have any questions about anything, definitely leave a comment below. Definitely reach out to me. And I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you.